History often remembers the Second World War through thunderous images. Columns of tanks rolling across Europe, cities burning under aerial bombardment, millions of soldiers clashing across vast battlefields. Yet some of the most decisive and disturbing moments of the war happened far from the front lines in silence, behind closed doors, and in places where no camera was meant to record what occurred. This was the hidden war, a war of whispers, informants, disappearances, and quiet deaths. In this shadowed world where secrecy was power and fear was currency, even the most ordinary objects could become weapons. Among them was piano wire. Piano wire was never designed to kill. It was a thin, remarkably strong steel wire engineered to endure immense tension inside musical instruments. Its strength, narrowness, and flexibility made it ideal for its intended purpose. But in wartime Europe, necessity and cruelty reshaped everyday materials. What once produced music could just as easily be turned into an instrument of death. The logic was grimly practical. Piano wire was widely available, easy to conceal, and required no firearms ammunition or specialized tools. In an environment where a single gunshot could bring soldiers running or expose an underground network, silence mattered. Piano wire offered exactly that. The method relied not on hanging, but strangulation. The attacker would typically approach from behind, often without warning. The wire was looped around the neck, and the ends pulled sharply. In some cases, small wooden handles or metal rods were attached to improve grip and leverage. Once tightened, the wire crushed the airway and compressed the carotid arteries that feed blood to the brain. Consciousness could fade in seconds. Death followed soon after. What made the method especially brutal was its intimacy. There was no distance between attacker and victim, no machinery, no moment of detachment. The person holding the wire had to remain close, applying pressure until the body went still. Because piano wire was extremely thin, it often cut into the skin and underlying tissue, concentrating force in a way that caused severe internal damage. It was efficient, silent, and horrifyingly personal. As the war expanded across Europe, such methods became closely associated with espionage and clandestine operations. Intelligence agents, saboteurs, and resistance fighters sometimes turned to garrote-style weapons when silence was essential. Firearms were loud and risky. A quiet killing could mean the difference between escape and execution. At the same time, covert violence became a cornerstone of Nazi control. Across Germany and occupied Europe, organizations like the Gestapo and the SS operated with extraordinary power and minimal oversight. Arrests often took place at night. People vanished from their homes, workplaces, or streets. Many were never seen again. While shootings were far more common, improvised methods of killing existed within this hidden machinery of terror. Strangulation, beatings, and secret executions occurred beyond formal legal systems. Law, in many places, had collapsed entirely, replaced by fear and obedience. Piano wire strangulation bore resemblance to the historical garrote, a metal loop once used in certain legal executions. But unlike mechanical garrotes, piano wire was improvised and entirely dependent on the person using it. Outcomes were unpredictable. Some deaths were swift, others were prolonged and agonizing. This lack of structure made it unsuitable for official executions, but effective for secret killings where control and silence mattered more than procedure. Despite its reputation, piano wire was never institutionalized as an official execution method by Nazi Germany. The regime relied on hanging with rope, shooting, and the guillotine for civilian executions carried out within the judicial system. Piano wire remained part of unofficial violence, intelligence work, resistance activity, and criminal acts that thrived in wartime chaos. One of the most enduring and disturbing stories connected to this method emerged after the failed July 20th assassination attempt against Adolf Hitler. In the brutal reprisals that followed, conspirators were subjected to deliberately humiliating and cruel executions. Some accounts claim that piano wire was used, and that the deaths were filmed for Hitler's viewing. Historians continue to debate the exact details, but the symbolic association remains powerful. Punishment was no longer just about death. It was about terror, spectacle, and absolute dominance. Fear during the war was not maintained solely through public executions or mass shootings. It spread through rumor, through silence, through the knowledge that people disappeared without explanation. Bodies were sometimes found. Often they were not. Even when facts were uncertain, the effect was unmistakable. Anyone could be taken. Anyone could vanish. For resistance fighters, the moral terrain was equally dark. Assassinations were often justified as acts of survival or necessity, yet they left deep psychological scars. Killing at close range stripped away any illusion of distance or righteousness. The war forced ordinary people into extraordinary choices, blurring the line between heroism and brutality. Today, piano wire strangulation is remembered not because it was common, but because of what it represents. It symbolizes a war fought in shadows, where silence was weaponized and everyday objects became tools of death. It reminds us that the Second World War was not only decided by armies and generals, but by fear, secrecy, and human vulnerability. In the end, this story is not about piano wire itself. It is about what war does to societies, how law erodes, how morality bends, how ordinary things are transformed by extraordinary violence. History is written not only in battles and treaties, but in locked rooms, whispered orders, and choices made in darkness. And it is often there, in the silence, that the true cost of war is revealed.